Good afternoon. Getting right down to business here. We're doing it live, doing more at 4 weekday afternoons, right after Guy Benson and just before the 790 KBC News Blitz with Randy Wang at 5. Mottek On Money, live on the air, 790 KBC, streaming live online worldwide at kbc.com, and the on-demand Mottek On Money podcast, kbc.com, Apple iTunes, YouTube, all your favorite podcast platforms. Rough day for the stock market and for Bitcoin. Stocks taking a tumble today on doubts about the AI valuations that weighed on the markets today. The NASDAQ plunged nearly 500 points back to 23,349. The S&P 500 down 80, and the Dow tumbled 251 points. Cryptocurrencies also took a hit today, with Bitcoin dropping below 100,000 to the lowest level we've seen since June. Right now, Bitcoin is just above 101,000. Nervous time this week. The U.S. Supreme Court set to hear arguments tomorrow over the legality of President Trump's global tariffs program. This is going to be a big case and may get some announcement tomorrow. We'll be on the story, of course. Wall Street also growing nervous that companies are not performing well enough to justify their high market valuations, prompting big bank CEOs to flag a likely correction ahead. Palantir shares, for example, dropped nearly 9% despite posting solid quarterly earnings. Uber posting strong results, but the shares moved lower, and a sign investors wanted more. Also, investors keeping an eye on potential developments in Washington as the U.S. government shutdown enters its 35th day to equal the record for the longest in history. We see the yield in the 10-year note now at 4.09%. NVIDIA shares pulling back today. The Magnificent One is back below $200 a share. We're going to be focusing on all of this here in just a moment. Bitcoin below 100,000 for a bit today. Analog gold also pulling back, with the price of gold back below 4,000. I'll discuss the latest moves with AXEL MERK, founder, president, and chief investment officer at MERK Investments, which includes the Van Eck MERK Gold Trust OUNZ. He's also an economist and author of the book Sustainable Wealth. He'll be joining me live later this hour. Shares of Strategy, the software company that came to prominence as a leveraged bet on Bitcoin, saw the lowest close in 7 months today. And Supermicro out with earnings today. The server maker currently came out with earnings, expects at least $36 billion in revenue for the fiscal year that ends next June. And looks like the stock is moving lower. Shares of rental car company Hertz moving higher, bucking the trend of 43% after the company reported a profitable third quarter. And as the earnings parade continued, we got the news that Papa John's pizza stock fell as much as 17% after Reuters reported that Apollo pulled its deal to take the pizza chain private at $64 a share. Of course, the government shutdown continues. We're watching the latest news there. Air traffic controllers missing their first paycheck. The shutdown's effects on airports appears to be getting worse, and a UPS plane has crashed at Louisville's International Airport today, causing an explosion. And we're following that story as well. And, of course, it's Election Day here in California with Prop 50 on the ballot. And New York City voters are deciding today who should be their next mayor to run the nation's city, with avowed Democratic Socialist Zoran Mamdani, the front-runner, facing former New York Governor Andrew Cuomo and Republican nominee Curtis Sliwa. Joining us live now on all of this, the top analyst in the tech world now, Daniel Ives, Managing Director and Global Head of Technology Research at Wedbush Securities, which is headquartered right here in Southern California. He's also chairman of AITCO Holdings. Dan Ives, thank you very much for taking the call here this afternoon.
Great to talk, Frank, as always.
Thank you very much. Take it from the top with tech so much in focus. Give us your reaction to this pullback here today.
I mean, look, I think if you saw the sell-off, it's really related to Palantir, because Palantir, along with NVIDIA, those are the golden childs of the AI trade. And I think Palantir, those were numbers that were off the charts in terms of just the quarter and what it showed in terms of demand. Stock sold off. So investors kind of took that as, is this as good as it gets? You get the bears, obviously, yelling fire in a crowd theater, and that's where you have a sell-off. But I'm telling you, these are buying opportunities like me and you have talked about for years.
All right, Palantir pulling back more than 16 at 190 and change. NVIDIA, the Magnificent One, which hit record highs recently, as many of these names have recently. NVIDIA down more than 8. at 198 and change. All of this in the context of a lot of bubble talk lately in the AI space and concerns about valuations. How do you address those concerns?
I mean, the way I address it, this earnings season is validation for the AI revolution. From the hyperscalers to CapEx, what we see with NVIDIA, to what we see with Palantir. It's giving you more confidence the spending trends are actually accelerating. When you talk about bubble, investors are still underestimating the scale and scope of what this is going to look like. So in my opinion, it's going to continue to be sort of sell-offs like this as opportunities, and that's how you own the winners of the AI revolution.
All right. In all this, crypto took a hit today with Bitcoin back below 100,000. It's back above 101 here at the moment. What are your thoughts on the crypto moves we saw in all this?
I mean, look, it's a consolidation. It's obviously, you're seeing risk off across tech, across crypto. It's going to be short-lived. Like, I believe you are going to see a hard rally higher on crypto into year-end.
On the live with Daniel Lives at Wedbush, and we're also watching the news out of Washington. The government shutdown continues. Is this also rattling the markets at this point?
I think a shutdown for a few weeks doesn't matter. You start to get to 35, 40, 45 days, it starts to have an impact, right? And I think ultimately what stops shutdowns, there's one thing that stops shutdowns, it's the long TSA lines. When that happens, that usually means that this thing's going to end pretty soon. And I think the reality is that it needs to end because of some of the worries that if it continues, the economic impact that it could have, even though small.
All right, tomorrow we're told the U.S. Supreme Court will hear arguments over the legality of the president's global tariffs program, and there's been concern that if the Supreme Court rejects it, that the U.S. Treasury would have to refund $1 trillion in tariff money. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow, and what are the possibilities here as far as market reaction is concerned?
There's a better chance of me replacing Ohtani for the Dodgers than that happening. So my view is that, that's going to continue to be upheld in terms of tariffs. There's going to be no reversal from the Supreme Court.
All right. Didn't Shohei and the rest of the team do a great job?
Come on, it's as good as you get, right? I mean, you don't get better than that. I mean, look, the only thing better than that is a Mottek suit on a Thursday somewhere in LA.
On there live with Daniel Lives at Wedbush, and you spent a lot of time in New York, of course, the biggest city in America, the financial capital of the world, and right now New York City voters are deciding who should be the next mayor to run the nation's largest city, with a Democratic Socialist at last word apparently in the lead there. What do you think is going to happen there in New York?
Look, it's a nightmare situation, right? I mean, in terms of, Mondavi, if he becomes mayor, and it looks like he is, and, I think this is something, the implications of this are going to be pretty massive. And I could just tell you, in terms of the pulse in the city, I think there's a lot of, especially within Wall Street and within the finance community, there's a lot of nervousness, right? So I'm trying to drink as much wine as I can tonight, hoping that this thing reverses.
Wow. And I don't know if he was joking or what, but the Texas governor said he will impose a steep tariff on New Yorkers moving to his state after voting on Election Day ends. I'm not sure this is a joke or what, but apparently it's been reported that the Texas governor has posted on X, after the polls close, I will impose a 100% tariff on anyone moving to Texas from New York.
Look, I mean, it just speaks to the general nervousness. And look, and even relating it to markets, it's the type of thing where right now we have a tech bull market that I believe continues for the next few years. AI revolution, first time in 30 years, U.S. is ahead of China when it comes to tech. But some of the sort of political, issues, government shutdown, Mondavi in New York, I mean, those are things where, they cause agita, right, for investors. And I think that it does add a little to maybe some of the white knuckles that you're seeing.
That is a good word to describe it. And what about Papa John's Pizza moving lower today on that Reuters report that Apollo pulled its deal to take the pizza?
Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling take you behind the scenes of one of the greatest shows of all time.
They're an ultimate rewatch podcast. We're in the midst of season 7. And
hold on. Obviously, we had a very successful television show for 10 years. That was Superman based.
But we had to make everyone believe that you were Clark.
I got to be honest, I was surprised at the end of this episode that I wasn't.
I was too!
Talkville, the Smallville rewatch podcast.
I'm not sure I knew when I was filming it that I was not me.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Chain private at $64 a share. It looks like Papa John's Pizza could not raise the dough today on Wall Street.
Oh, that was a good one. That was good. I like that one. Look, I think it shows. I mean, that was viewed like that thing was going to be a done deal. So the fact that they pulled it from there, I mean, that's definitely a concern for them. They're going to have to look for another buyer. And I mean, Frank, you might be ordering more Domino's rather than Papa John's.
You know me too well. Now, what about analog gold back below 4,000? Of course, we saw all the precious metals pop this year, and gold got up to around 4,400. Right now, it's back below 4,000 here at 39.46. We see silver at 46.85, and platinum, which we also follow, has pulled back to, 1,539 here at the moment.
Look, I think you're seeing the sell-off. It's almost in tandem, right? Gold, crypto, tech. But my whole view is that it's a digestion period. This is not the end of the bull trade in gold, crypto, or tech. And you're just seeing some selling and maybe a little bit of a risk off that's affecting all this, and that's my view. I mean, I think this is one it continues to move higher, as we go into year as well as 2026.
All right. Obviously, a lot of geopolitical concerns still on the table. Oil at this point hovering at around $60 a barrel. Are you doing anything with oil at the moment?
I think it goes lower, right? I mean, if you look at just all the supply issues coming out of the Middle East, it feels like outside of just some anomalous black swan thing from a Russia perspective, it feels like oil is going lower, over the coming months.
At this point, are you betting on volatility? We see the VIX index, the volatility index, Wall Street so-called fear index, getting a 10% pop today.
I think that's something where I bet against the vol going into year end. I mean, I think, you kind of have this sell-off that we're seeing, and then I think you see market rip going into year end. I mean, that's sort of our view. I'm not saying, here and there you can't have a speed bump, but I think this is kind of going to be like a sell-off that's short-lived, and you buy it going into year end.
All right, and here we are in November here. The holiday season is upon us. I was in Beverly Hills last evening and saw the decorations already going up, getting set for the holiday season here, and retailers gearing up for all this. Are we going to see a Santa Claus rally early or late this year, and how would you size up the retailers at this point?
Yeah, I think early Santa Claus rally in terms of what you see. Look, I think consumers obviously under pressure, right? I mean, because you're seeing an uneven economy. You're definitely seeing more strain on the consumer. It's not a recession. It's still a very healthy consumer, healthy in terms of even like balance sheets that you're seeing from the bank perspective. But I think it's uneven because right now consumers almost a do not enter zone, right, in terms of the stocks. So I think you definitely want to see, obviously a good sort of retail environment going into holiday season. I think that's something that, I think some of these consumer names probably oversold. That's sort of our view.
All right. You're also head of AITCO, and Orbs is the ticker symbol on that one, and WorldCoin is your coin with your treasury there. Any updates on what's happening there at Orbs?
Yeah, I mean, obviously crypto sell-off, in terms of the coin, you've seen that across the board. But our view is as you look at more and more companies going toward AI and the AI revolution hits its next stage of growth, our view is in terms of World and Orbs and true what's going to be human-proof identification, that's the future. and that's something I think is going to become more and more of a reality as more companies head down the AI path.
All right, and as far as the practical use of this AI authentication program that you guys at ATCO have, how does it work? And if anyone wants to try it, are they able to do so now?
Yeah, they can. I mean, and you have more and more orbs around the United States, especially over the coming months. Look, there's almost, we'll call it 18 million that have already signed up for this around the world. The way you do it, I mean, basically it's like, with the orb, that's the eye verification, the scanning of your iris. That data basically sits in the orb for 10 seconds, goes right into your phone, and the data is full privacy. You're the only one that has that data. And then ultimately you get a world coin and you join the network. And the reality is that the way in the future, especially with bots and robots, that you're going to be able to be identified, it's not going to be necessarily a password, social security number. It's really going to be true identification through the iris.
On the live with Daniel Ives at Wedbush. Daniel Ives, any specific places where you are putting money now and or taking it off the table?
Look, on this tech sell-off, I view it as a golden buying opportunity. I mean, I think 5 to 7 times in a year you get sell-offs like this, and they create the opportunities. But look, think about it. Numbers are robust for earnings season. Stocks are selling off because you have some short sellers that have been dead wrong in the market for the last 5 years, talking about valuations. That's when you buy more of these names.
What do you think is going to happen tomorrow?
I think green. I think markets. You can maybe see like a little kind of lingering in terms of sell-off, and then I think over the next few days, I think you might have like a ripper somewhere in terms of a rally.
Daniel Ives, thank you very much for taking the call. We'll let you get to the vino and maybe some pizza too for you there. Thank you very much.
You're a lot of it, given that mayor raise. Okay.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Daniel Ives, Managing Director and Global Head of Technology Research at Wedbush Securities, headquartered here in Southern California, also Chairman of ATCO Holdings, live with us here on Mottek On Money, 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues, 790 KABC. Rough day for the stock market and for cryptos. The Dow down 251 at the bell at 47,085. The S&P 500 down 80 at 6,771. And the NASDAQ down nearly 500 points, down 486 at 23,349. The yield in the 10-year note now at 4.09%. Bitcoin cracking below 100,000 for the first time in months. Right now up about 600 at 101,093. Ethereum is back down to 3,267. Solana down to 155, and Doge at the moment at 16 cents. The price of gold is back below 4,000, down 14 and change to 39.46. We see silver hovering at around 46.85 at the moment, and platinum at $1,100. Make that $1,539, down just about $11.70 here at the moment. The Magnificent One, NVIDIA, among those leading the tech sell-off today, down more than $8, back to $198 and change. We see Tesla shares down more than $24 at $444 and change. Among the crypto-related ETFs, IBIT down more than 3 at 57 and change. BITO down nearly $1 at 15.78. Mara down $1.19 at 16.62. The volatility index, the so-called Wall Street Fear Index, popping today by 10%. Shares of AMD moving lower by just about $10 at $2.50 and change. The company posted third quarter results this afternoon, and the stock is off about 3.5% in after-hours trading. Supermicro stock fell even after its earnings. Guidance moved higher. We see Supermicro shares in the spotlight here this afternoon. See if we can bring up the quote on that one. That one, the ticker symbol SMCI, pulling back nearly 7% today and down about 8% now in after-hours trading. And now the latest news on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues here, 790 KABC. Rough day for the stock market and for cryptos, even for gold, pulling back below 4,000 an ounce this week after hitting a record high above 4,400 recently. The Dow pulling back 251 at the close today. The S&P 500 down 80. The NASDAQ down 486. Bitcoin cracked below 100,000 during the day today. We'll talk more about the cryptos with ELEANOR TERRETT coming up later this hour. Ethereum also took a hit today, right now at around 3,267. Gold, meanwhile, hovering just below 4,000 an ounce. Joining us live now to cover gold as well as what's happening with the economy with a lot of moving parts today. Let's bring in AXEL MERK, founder, president, and chief investment officer at MERK Investments, which includes the VanEck MERK Gold Trust, OUNZ. He's also an economist and author of the book Sustainable Wealth. AXEL, thank you very much for coming to the line here and maybe help us unpack what just happened here today.
Oh, markets went down today.
Oh, yeah?
In case you haven't noticed, call it deleveraging, call it a reaction to comments of some CEOs that the markets might be pricey, call it a selling of the anticipated news of election today.
Mic drop. Hosted by former Navy SEAL Mike Ritland. It's Raw.
So you do 4 platoons and 7 years at Team 3 when you go to the jump team.
Scariest job I had in the Navy until people started shooting at me.
Yeah.
It was a blast, though.
It's unfiltered.
At what point did you decide I'm done with the SEAL teams?
If you only knew how the Navy works, we don't have an enemy to fight, like we'll eat each other.
It's tough talk from the top minds in their field.
They're not looking for the best guy, they're looking for the right guy.
Yeah.
Mic drop. Follow and listen on your favorite platform.
Whatever the reason is, it was some sort of deleveraging. You saw it mostly in the crypto market where it was mostly the exchanges that auto-delever that took the lead downward. But yes, it was a deleveraging, a selling out of the Max 7, and we can give it a story, but markets have been up and up and up, and today they're down.
Very interesting. On there live with AXEL MERK, and another wild card this week. And investors, of course, are keeping an eye on what's happening in Washington on this government shutdown, which appears to be impacting air travel already, but also Supreme Court decision, possibly maybe tomorrow, on whether the Trump tariffs are in fact legal and whether the Treasury will have to refund $1 trillion. What do you think is going to happen tomorrow?
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I mean, who knows? And let's assume for a moment the Supreme Court might strike those down. The question is the administration going to just say, all right, we'll put these tariffs in anyway based on another statute, right? And so we don't know what twists and turns that's going to take. Also, keep in mind that some of the trade deals that have been struck have been somewhat struck being voluntarily, right? I mean, you might have countries back out of them, but simply because we have our rules doesn't force the other side, the other country to agree to them. And so since they've agreed, the administration may well say, well, okay, we don't need these tariffs, but look, hey, Japan or whatever country has agreed to these things, so we'll keep it in place anyway. So I am not smart enough to anticipate the twists and turns that's all going to take. What we do know is companies do what they can do in the face of uncertainty, which is to contain costs. And as you have seen, there have been lots of layoffs announced, and that's because companies are just trying to assess, well, where can we save costs? And staffing is one of the areas where they can.
Oh, we did see the price of gold achieve an all-time high. Actually, it was above 4,500, right? Is that the calculation you have there? The intraday high, I believe, went above 4,500. This has the trade war escalated between the U.S. and China, then eased after that big meeting between President Trump and the Chinese leader. What do you give us your reaction to the latest moves in gold, now back below 4,000 here at the moment?
Sure. Currently, the spot price is at 39.36 as we're talking, and we're still near 4,000. So we are still up about 50% year to date in the price of gold, and so this is a pullback. The question is whether we had seen the highs or not. Hindsight will be our judge, but we did not see a retail frenzy when the buying happened, and I wouldn't be surprised. And also, if these cost-cutting moves indicate a weaker economy, and of course we've had a lot of concerns on the private credit side and other things, then the Federal Reserve is going to be more aggressive in cutting rates. So gold tends to be a diversifier, a quote-unquote hedge. That doesn't mean it will necessarily work, but one of the things we've seen is that people are somewhat disillusioned with bonds, and they're looking for alternatives to bonds. Now, clearly, the volatility in recent weeks has shown that they're not a direct substitute, but still, gold is a beneficiary as people are looking for alternatives to bonds.
On there live with AXEL MERK at MERK Investments. And all right, let's see. What about silver? Back below 50 here, 46 and change after achieving a record high recently.
Well, silver is notoriously volatile, and that's in part because it has this strong industrial component. So when the perception is the economy is going to weaken, it never quite knows what to do. Should it sell off because there's going to be less silver used, or should it rally because the Federal Reserve is going to cut interest rates? And so we were a little bit in this Goldilocks where silver just steamed ahead and broke through 50. And indeed, as we're talking, it's just over 47 again in the spot market. But it is very, very difficult to say what that's going to do. I think that is going to be more correlated to risk assets only if the economic data, which of course we're not getting right now, are going to be much weaker. Then I think silver will rally. In the meantime, it's going to be somewhat hostage to the broader market.
All right, and platinum has also seen eye-popping gains this year, right now above 1,500, I see. What about platinum here?
Well, similarly, industrial use is quite significant, and so it plays as a big factor of how people assess the economy is going to go forward.
All right, and speaking of the economy, we had that big Fed decision recently, a quarter-point drop in the benchmark Fed funds rate, the benchmark interest rate, sending the prime lending rate lower by a quarter percentage point, which has impacted business and consumer loans. We've seen a rally in the stock market up until, this week. And the Fed is meeting again next month in December. What do you think is going to happen next month?
Well, we had a little bit of a revolt at the Fed because the folks who don't want to cut rate, and there's a fair number of them, they say, wait a second, we don't have any economic data to base any of this on, and we might have higher than expected inflation. Remember, inflation is still at 3%. Economy might be weaker, but we don't know. We shouldn't be acting if we don't know what the facts are. And Powell is, of course, a lame duck chair. He's going to be out in a few months. And so those who say not so fast are speaking up. And if we have the government still shut down at that stage, we might not get a cut. If we do get the government to open up and get some economic data to come out, I would think that Powell will have the authority to cut again in December. And that's the more likely scenario, but it's no longer the sure bet. And those relative probabilities do matter when it comes to asset prices. Currently, by the way, it's a 71% or 72% probability that's priced in. That's up from 60-some percent that a few days ago after the Fed meeting.
All right. You see any flies in the Chardonnay here on the economic front with this crypto pullback? Anything in the financial system that concerns you at all at this point? A lot of bubble talk here, and whether we're even in a crypto bubble and so forth. Give us your assessment here.
Well, crypto is not going to cause any systemic issues. It's highly correlated to risk assets. The systemic issues could come from private credit. The head of UBS said that they're rating shopping just like there was in the financial crisis in order to get private credit placed. They're shopping around to get a better rating, and that can cause issues. At the same time, the lenders are looking far more closely. There have been some scandals where people kind of pledged their receivable more than once. Those bad apples will come up in an extended boom. The question is how good the controls are. Private credit is getting larger, so it's going to be a bigger factor. How big there is an issue. Personally, it's systemic, how big it is, and we will find out if and when we have a more significant downturn. The folks that swim naked are visible when the tide goes out, right?
Right, as Warren Buffett famously said, and I did see that Financial Times article that the UBS head said, also joining a growing chorus of voices, according to the Financial Times, pointing to risks in the multi-trillion-dollar insurance industry, including its holdings of illiquid private credit loans and opaque disclosures. So suddenly that's on the radar screen.
Exactly. So when the glass is half empty, these stories come out. The question really is, where are we in the cycle, right? In the 90s, for those who are old enough to remember, there were warnings that we're in a bubble, but Greenspan was years early, right? And so, yes, there are concerns. And the question as an investor is, do you try to time the peak or do you take precautions before we at the peak? It is very, very difficult to time the tops here, the top in the market. But clearly the MAX 7 have had an amazing run and are not exactly cheap.
Axel, thank you very much for taking the call live with us here this afternoon on this big day. Axel MERK, founder, president, and chief investment officer at MERK Investments, which includes the Van Eck MERK Gold Trust, OUNZ. Also, Axel MERK is an economist and author of the book Sustainable Wealth. Axel, thank you very much for joining us live here this afternoon.
My pleasure.
From analog gold, we'll go to digital gold here in just a moment with ELEANOR TERRETT tackling the cryptos. That and more straight ahead here on 790 KABC. Mottek On Money continues 790 KABC. Nervous time in crypto land as Bitcoin tumbled below 100,000 for the first time since June. Let's bring in the expert on the cryptos here. ELEANOR TERRETT joins us live now, crypto expert, business journalist, and co-host of the Crypto in America podcast. ELEANOR, thank you very much for taking the call with us this afternoon.
Thank you, Frank. Great to be with you. I'm actually here at the WABC studios in New York City for election night coverage. It's a big night here in New York City, as you know. So crazy night to be in New York for sure. Yeah, well, let's talk about that. New Yorkers voting today in what's going to be the most closely watched, certainly mayoral election in years with the avowed Democratic Socialist, President Trump calls him a communist, Zoran Mamdani, the favorite to win there. How are things sizing up there this evening? Yeah, so the polls close in about an hour and 10 minutes, Frank. So we still got some time to go, but it's shaping up to be a close one between former governor of New York, Andrew Cuomo. He's running as an independent, and the Democrat Socialist, as you correctly described him, Zoran Mamdani. It's going to be a tight one. Lots of young folks coming out to vote in favor of Mamdani. A lot of the older folks coming out for Cuomo, but it's going to be an interesting one. We will be watching closely. And then also in the mix, the Republican candidate, Guardian Angels guy, Curtis Sliwa. So we'll keep an open line to you and see what happens there. And is that partially one reason maybe that Mamdani may become the next mayor of New York, that we saw this shockwave ripple through the cryptos today? I don't think it has anything to do with the crypto markets. I will say, for a fun tidbit, Andrew Cuomo actually did embrace crypto recently, Frank. About a week or two ago, he said that if he became mayor of New York City, he would roll out a digital assets working group and prioritize it as something that the city needs in terms of, updating its infrastructure, implementing blockchain technology, and kind of putting it as a priority if and when he wins mayor. So, what happens tonight, we will see, and we'll see if that happens. But let's talk about Bitcoin, because you did mention it in the beginning of the show. It's having a rough day. It fell below 100,000 for the first time since June, although it's back up slightly now. I believe it's just over the 100K mark. For comparison, the world's largest digital asset hit an all-time high of 126,000 in early October, so just about a month ago now. And what Bitcoin does, other coins usually follow, right? So looking at other major digital assets, you've got Ethereum, it's down 10% at around 3,200, XRP down 7% at $2.17, and Solana down over 8% around 152. You got your stocks related to crypto also down heavily today. Coinbase, Robinhood, and Michael Saylor's Strategy saw their stock prices drop by at least 6%. So why the free fall? Investors are rotating out of riskier assets due to concerns over really high valuations. And we saw that today, not just with crypto, but also with gold and major tech stocks taking a hit. Lots of rotations into safe havens like bonds. We're seeing big funds like BlackRock and Fidelity's Bitcoin ETFs. They've seen outflows of like $1.3 billion in withdrawals this week. Investors are jittery. Ether funds are also not far behind. We've seen outflows there of about $500 million in outflows for Ether. The market mood is shifting as well, Frank. According to the Fear and Greed Index in crypto, we've got one for the traditional stock market, but we also have one for crypto as well. Investors are leaning towards fear after weeks of neutral sentiment. Some analysts, though, that I've spoken to are saying if the sentiment doesn't improve, that there could be a further drop to as low as 88,000 for Bitcoin. But let's remember that crypto is inherently volatile. It's not like the stock market where swings of 20% are frankly downright alarming. Swings of anywhere between 20 and 40% are considered somewhat normal in the digital asset space. So it goes up, it goes down, but right now it's looking like it's on a downward trend.
All right, it's a lot more fun when it goes up, but it does go down, as we saw here today. Were you at a New York crypto conference as well this week?
Yeah, that's right. So there's two big conferences going on in New York this week, Frank. Ripple Swell is the flagship conference for Ripple, the crypto company behind the cross-border payments company, and they tend to use the cryptocurrency XRP. So when you hear XRP, a lot of the times people will call the XRP token the Ripple token. Now, Ripple doesn't issue XRP, but it does do a lot of work with the token. And by all my conversations today at the Ripple Swell conference, you wouldn't know the markets were tanking. There's a lot of optimism about what Ripple itself is doing in the space. But you have to remember that this is a company that was just a year ago being sued by the SEC over allegations that it was selling unregistered securities, and many other companies in the sector were also being sued. Coinbase, Kraken, a lot of these big American crypto companies were under persecution by the former administration because there just were no rules of the road around this stuff. You and I have talked about this a bunch. The new SEC chair drops nearly all those cases. Now, Ripple is kind of the perfect example of a company that had to operate outside of the U.S. and now has come back because it's taking advantage of these friendlier regulatory environment that has happened under the Trump administration. It's made a series of acquisitions, and it's even applied for a national bank charter, so we'll be watching Ripple. But the conversation circled around these new ETFs that launched on Wall Street last week. We saw a new Solana ETF from Bitwise, and we're anticipating the launch of a possible XRP ETF as soon as next week. One of the reasons for interest in these ETFs is they provide a bridge for mainstream investors and everyday investors who would like to invest in the stock market to get access to crypto products in a way that is familiar to them. They don't have to open a digital wallet. They can just go to their broker and say, hey, I want to invest in an XRP ETF or a Bitcoin ETF. And it's a lot easier and familiar for these investors who might be a little bit too nervous to invest directly in Bitcoin or Ethereum at this point in time.
Very interesting week to have a conference like that. And what are the market monitors saying about where things go from here with Bitcoin moving into bear market territory? That is 20% or more below its most recent high, which, as you noted, was above 126,000. It cracked below 100,000 here today. What's the latest forecast?
Well, the latest forecast is we keep an eye on it, but the charts are saying, based on, market watchers who really watch this stuff every day, 88,000 could be a low to watch. That's quite a way down from here. That's another $20,000 down, right? And then, going back up from here, 107,000 is the next, I guess you call it, support level to watch. But it's all based on sentiment, Frank. It depends on, kind of how that fear and greed index is looking up in the next couple of days, and how traders are feeling around the sentiment as well. And you saw the gold price, we call Bitcoin digital gold, right? We saw investors fleeing out of gold today as well with the gold price down. So, you compare the two, investors coming out of Bitcoin, investors coming out of gold. Maybe if investors go back into gold, we might see investors come back into Bitcoin as well. So we'll have to see how it goes over the next couple of days.
Right, especially tonight in New York, where you're right there, the city that never sleeps. You mentioned Andrew Cuomo has warmed up to crypto. Has Zoran Mamdani said anything about crypto?
He has not. No, the only thing he said about crypto is he's criticized Andrew Cuomo for actually doing some advisory work for a crypto exchange called OKX, which was actually it had to operate offshore for a while. It was kind of one of those crypto exchanges that was under the thumb of the sort of the regulatory crackdown that a lot of these crypto companies faced under the prior administration. Andrew Cuomo did some legal work for them, actually, after he stepped down as governor. Mamdani has criticized Cuomo for that, but he has not directly addressed crypto. So I can tell you he probably will not be getting the votes of the crypto crowd. I don't believe Curtis Sliwa has addressed crypto either in any meaningful way. So Cuomo has the edge there. But I guess we'll see how the polling turns out. Just in an hour from now, Frank, we'll know.
All right, terrific, Eleanor. Thank you very much for taking the call here on this important day. Eleanor TERRETT, crypto expert, business journalist, and co-host of the Crypto in America podcast, live with us here on Mottek On Money on 790 KABC, on a day in which we saw Bitcoin crack back below 100,000 for the first time since June. Right now, it's hovering at around 101,000. The Dow down 251, S&P 500 down 80, NASDAQ down 486. Stay tuned now for the News Blitz here on 790 KABC.
Michael Rosenbaum and Tom Welling take you behind the scenes of one of the greatest shows of all time.
They're ultimate rewatch podcast. We're in the midst of season 7, and
hold on. Obviously, we had a very successful television show for 10 years that was Superman based.
But we had to make everyone believe that you were Clark.
I gotta be honest, I was surprised at the end of this episode that I wasn't.
I was too.
Talkville, the Smallville rewatch podcast.
I'm not sure I knew when I was filming it that I was not me.
Follow and listen on your favorite platform.